Testing, testing, testing. We're gonna.
Okay. All right, let's call this meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome to our regular meeting of the Norwich City School District Board of Education, October 19th, 2022. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from the September 28th, 2022 regular meeting. Motion moved by Brian Burton.
I'll second.
Second by Clyde. Any discussion, additions, or corrections? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Number 2, our superintendent's report. Mr. Ryan, you have the floor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Board Recognition Month, and so we're going to start tonight with just a nice little celebration of the work that you as the Board of Education do for our students in district. So on behalf of the district, thank you to all of our school board members for serving the children in our community. Tonight, we recognize the vital role and contribution that you all play in the education of our children. So once again, on behalf of NCSD, we appreciate you. You make a difference in the lives of our students every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
We were going to do a picture tonight, but we're lacking one of our board members, our vice president is overseas. So at the end of the meeting, unless anybody's hungry right now, we have some cupcakes. I see Brian kind of eyeballing a little bit. So
He's always hungry.
some cupcakes and some goodie bags for our Board of Education, just again, a token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Okay. Transitioning on, I didn't see, is the divider yet? We have a guest that will be joining us. She's stuck in Syracuse traffic right now.
No, I'm here.
Oh, she's here. There she is. I
Here.
can see it. Okay. Lindsay Planthold, come on up.
All right.
Lindsay is practicing lawyer with Farrar and Forenza, and will be providing just an update regarding, based on our conversations last month, on some clarification between policy versus practice. And really what I want you to do is tonight see this as opportunity for conversation, right? This isn't just a formal presentation. This is really an opportunity for you to seek some clarity with the questions that you have around policy and practice. Okay, so she has prepared some slides just to help with the initial conversation. And Brian's gonna pull it up.
I have a thumb drive too.
Great.
It's easier.
Put that in, it'll be easier. Jake, can you assist? Real quick, she's gonna throw a thumb drive in. Good. Thanks, sir. Jake Resnick is our on-deck batter this evening,
Yeah.
providing a State of the Union address on technology in NCSD. Lindsay, how was traffic? Okay? Good.
Yeah, just kind of hit like rush hour, but
Yep.
I'll even ban a white for you. I'll even,
I'll do my slides.
yeah.
Okay, there aren't that many, so, okay.
All right, let's do this.
Is
Um,
Chris, did you want to do an introduction of the board first, and Lindsay, or just as board members?
Yeah, we can do that if you want.
Okay,
So
sure.
that you know. So I'm Chris Olds, I'm the president. Sure, so, yeah. Go ahead, introduce, you can introduce yourself. I don't need to introduce it.
Brian Burton.
Step Phelps, and we've met through the policy meetings. Ross Forenza,
Burge.
Brendan Hamilton, and we've met.
And we're missing Brian Reed, who's the vice president. He is on a business trip. So.
So Scott said, I'm gonna just give a short presentation tonight, and definitely open to questions that anybody might have. But just talking about policy versus practice and procedures and how that works. Thank you. Just to give a quick overview, I want to talk about our board policy manual review project that I've been working on with the policy subcommittee. give you an update on how that's going, and just kind of talk about the purpose and goals, why we're doing that and why it's important for the district. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between board policies and things like practices or procedures or regulations, things that are more at a building level, maybe internal types of policies versus the public board manual that's on your website. And then kind of tied in with this idea of policies versus practice and sort of who has the responsibility for creating those policies, developing those policies, and then enforcing them. We'll talk just a little bit about what I call the division of labor, sort of the authority that's both split and shared between the board and district administrators, and how that relationship works and how it relates to policy. So just a quick update. We've had, I think, 2 policy subcommittee meetings now, and kind of come up with a plan on how we're going to tackle the board policy manual. We're going to start by going through and making sure that the district has all of the legally required policies. So there's about 50 policies that are required by various state and federal laws that the district needs to have in the books. So we're going through right now, making sure that we have those policies, and also that for those that we already have, making sure they're up to date and they're accurate with regards to the current state of the law. So that's kind of our first step. We are going to then kind of go through and remove any policies that might be outdated, that might no longer apply to the district, or maybe are just not really in compliance with the current state of the law anymore. We're also going to do a review to try to find if there's any sort of duplicative policies or policies that we just don't really need. They're not really serving a purpose any longer, and remove those. But overall, the idea is that we're trying to streamline this manual. We're trying to make it into something that's more manageable, more user-friendly, and we want it accessible both for board members and administrators, but also school staff, students and parents, community members. We really want this to be a useful tool. And as the manual is now, there's a lot there, and it's really daunting. And so I think the idea of streamlining it will just make it a much more useful tool for everybody. So talking about the idea of, what is a board policy? What's the purpose of a board policy? So when we're thinking of policies, these are essentially the laws of the district. This is what governs the district. So some of the things policies do, they set and communicate our priorities and standards. What we want to happen in the district, what are the priorities for, students, for staff, for pretty much anything going on in the district. They're also a way to communicate the board's objectives, so what they want to accomplish, and also directives, so how they want that to be accomplished. Going along with that, board policies also tell us, who's responsible for achieving those objectives. So assigning responsibility, having accountability, so kind of assigning, who's going to carry out these tasks that the policy is saying we need to do. And generally just sort of having a vision for the future, the district's mission, having some continuity there. So again, this is part of the reason we are trying to streamline the manuals. We really want the policies to fit together, to work together as a whole, and have that continuity of mission. Other policies are there, as I mentioned before, there's certain ones required by law. So some policies are to comply with laws and to have something on the books as is required. And a lot of policies actually function to limit liability. So they educate district staff on what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to comply with laws, and that helps everyone because it keeps us from breaking the law or doing something we're not supposed to. So thinking about what a policy should do and what a policy really shouldn't do. So again, these are the laws of the district. They're supposed to establish broad goals, again, providing those directives, explaining what needs to be done, and assigning responsibility for who's going to carry out that task, and then communicating the goals of the district and our priorities. So these are big picture issues. These are broader sort of governing principles. That's the idea of a policy. What a policy is not supposed to do is provide a very detailed roadmap on how we get to where we're going. So we're not looking for detailed procedures to how to reach those objectives. Those nuts and bolts are left up to school administrators, to school staff who are carrying out the day-to-day operations of our district. We also don't really want policies that are simply restating what the law is. Because at the end of the day, you're subject to the laws, whether or not the policy says that you are. And so this is going to be part of our review process as well, as to try to eliminate language that's just sort of a copy and paste from a statute. And the other thing we really don't want to see in a policy is any language that says we're ensuring certain outcomes, unless there's a legal requirement to do so. So in other words, we don't want to take on a legal duty that we don't have to, because if we take it on and then we don't fulfill it, we're creating liability for ourselves. So those are policies. Now, thinking about practices, internal procedures, internal regulations. There's some advantages to having certain things in a regulation versus in a policy. So a regulation, it's much more detailed guidance. It's giving you that roadmap. It's giving you sort of the layout. How are we going to carry out the tasks needed to reach the broader goals established in policy? One advantage is these can be internal. It's not necessarily something that has to be on the website. Although sometimes we'll see, manuals and certain guidelines that might be on our website, but if it's something that you really just want to be for district staff and for their information, it can be something internal. Another big advantage to an internal regulation is that it's easier to modify or remove it. So there's a specific process laid out in your policy manual if you're going to be updating, amending, or removing a board policy from the manual, or something like a regulation. It's easy to tweak it as time goes on. It's easy to get rid of it if it's no longer serving you. So that's a big advantage. And it makes it better for certain areas of school operation that might be in flux, whether that's legally or culturally. One example I've seen popping up lately is how to handle issues related to transgender students. There's no legal requirement to have a policy on this. And, we've seen these legal issues shift and change even in the past, 5 to 10 years. I imagine we're going to see them continue to change both legally and culturally as time goes on. And so that's a subject area that may be better suited as an internal procedure or regulation on how to handle those issues in the day-to-day context with students in school, as opposed to having that sort of set in stone as a district policy. So
You want to catch your breath for a second?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm talking really fast.
Any thoughts, any questions so far on anything that's been presented?
I do have some stuff, but I'll save it to the end because you may cover certain things that may answer some questions if you don't mind.
Scott, anything you want to add before I
No, I
kind of
just,
switch topics?
I think we speak the language, right? A lot differently than maybe a Board of Education does, so I just wanted to provide opportunity for some dialogue if there is a need.
So another way that we can kind of think about how policies fit into the operation of the school district. Is thinking about the authority of the board versus the authority of administrators, how those authorities may differ, how their different duties may differ. And so as the Board of Education, as you probably know, there's no legal authority to act as an individual member. You act as a group, you act as a corporate body. And, the board delegates certain of the duties, certain things related to the operation of schools to administrators. So things, the day-to-day running of the school would go to the superintendent, would go to building administrators. The board is not in the school building every single day. Again, thinking about the policy level, you're establishing those high-level goals. Your goals are communicated to building administrators, to the superintendent, and then they're the ones carrying out those tasks. So they're the ones that perhaps are relying more on the regulations, the detailed, procedures for how exactly those goals, those broad tasks are going to be carried out at the school level. So there's kind of a split. The board has the duty of establishing strategic goals, taking action, providing oversight, whereas the superintendent and administrators are the ones implementing that policy. They're the ones supervising the staff day to day. They're the ones ensuring legal compliance day to day. So I thought it might be helpful to give some examples of how that shared authority works. So another example, board policy that which we looked at recently, which is a legally required policy that the subcommittee reviewed, relates to gender neutral bathrooms. So we had a new law, new section of the education law that now says that any pre-existing bathrooms that were single stall, the signage related to those bathrooms has to change, and it has to clearly indicate that they're gender neutral. I think previously sometimes those were called family bathrooms or something like that. So this law is requiring the signage to change. So we are also required by the law to have a board policy talking about our compliance with this gender neutral bathroom mandate. The board establishes that broad policy. They look at what the law says. The law says, here's what we have to do. The board says, okay, we have to do this to comply, and we're delegating that responsibility to the superintendent and his or her designees. What that means is now building administrators are going to look at, do we need to order new signs? Where are we going to order them from? How are we going to put those purchase orders in? How are the signs going to be replaced when they come in? That's not a task necessarily that the board is working on at that very granular level. You established that goal, that policy, and now it's being enacted, it's being implemented at the building level. And so that's that kind of split between policy and what actually happens in practice. And it's that split of authority and the delegation and sort of the shared tasks between the two. Another example is things like fiscal policy, finance and operations of the building. So obviously the board is involved in setting those policies, setting those sort of broad, governance examples, but the actual carrying out of things like payroll, personnel, contract management, purchasing, those are all delegated to individuals in the school who are then perhaps relying on internal procedures on, how do we set up the hiring process for a new principal? Who's involved in that? What are the steps? How do we accomplish it? Now, this is kind of a shared task between the board and administrators, because personnel appointments, tenure decisions, those things do happen at the board level. However, sort of the day-to-day tasks to get it to that point are happening on the administrator's authority. So I hope those are kind of helpful examples to kind of differentiate where policy and procedure split, and then how that kind of fits in with the roles of the board and the roles of administrators. So happy to take questions or input or.
So there's a specific example that's driven this conversation this deep at this point. And based upon what I'm hearing, I just want to make sure that I am understanding you correctly. So a new athletic and extracurricular policy was enacted this year, was put into place, essentially a code of conduct that talks about, grades, having a grade standard in it. And then there's verbiage in regards to taking time off, missing practices due to unexcused absences or family vacation. And what's come up is, should this have gone through the board first before it was put out there for signatures and being put in as a practice? So I think what I'm hearing is that it would be our job as a board to put into place a policy that says that we have an academic and attendance standard policy for athletics and extracurriculars. What's in that policy would then not be a board function. It would be an administrative function that the board would really have no say over that. Am I understanding that correct? And am I getting that right? Am I making it too simple?
No, so I understand what you're saying. So, there are things that I think kind of straddle this line where they're not typically in the board policy manual. So I'm thinking things like an athletic or extracurricular, code or manual, like a student handbook, the student code of conduct. Those are things that are sort of standalone documents. I think that it's, it may be appropriate for the board to have input on those. And again, that's going to be based on what we were talking about, those kind of broad principles for what we expect of student athletes, what we expect of kids who participate in extracurriculars, based upon the idea that that's, you know, a privilege. It's not their right to participate in it. It's a privilege to be there. And so we have certain expectations. I think that certainly can be sort of a back and forth conversation and communication. But when I think about sort of how it's implemented and the details of, okay, a kid is caught drinking at a party, you know, what happens? What's the process? That's, I think, a lot more granular than I would expect a board to get. But I think that it's one of those sort of in-between type of documents where I think board input can be important. But when it comes to sort of the implementation of it, you know, part of that division of labor, I also like to think about, you know, who are sort of the experts in your district, on your districts and on your students. So, you know, your building principals are there every day. Your athletic director is sort of, you know, right in the middle of all of those types of issues. So I think there's a back and forth, and I think there's an opportunity for the board to have input and questions about a document like that, but also to rely on the expertise of the people who are there day to day and who have that sort of more in-depth understanding, because, you know, that's their area of expertise. That's their job every day. Does that help?
So what you're saying is it happens to be one of those gray things.
That's the lawyer answer.
So let's talk about liability then. So between policy and break, you break a policy or we don't follow policy on something, obviously the liability is very specific, right?
Right.
If it's considered a practice and you deviate from it anyway, so let's say I've got a kid who's a bench player or is the backup lead in a play. They're not doing so well in class. We decide to hold them to the strict end of the practice that says that they are suspended for a certain period of time.
Mhm.
We have the star player, the lead in the play, and the plays next Thursday. They're not doing so well either, but because their role is more important, needed more, if we decide to deviate from that and say, all right, well, you can play as long as you've showed some sort of improvement or something like that. What is the liability not only to the school district, the administrators, but also the board?
So I wouldn't think of it in terms necessarily of liability, but just in terms of fairness. I think if you have established, and it depends how detailed your athletic code is and what the due process is. So if there's a violation and there's a very specific sort of procedure laid out in that manual that says, first step is this, second step is this, and there's no language in there that says, for example, you know, the building principal shall have the discretion to reduce such penalties depending on surrounding circumstances. If there's no language like that, I mean, you have to follow that. And I don't think of it as liability. I think of it as fairness. I think of it as optics as well. You know, if parents in the community are seeing that some students are treated differently than others, but there's clearly an established rule about how this is supposed to go, I think that's an issue just in terms of how you're viewed and how the district is viewed in terms of enforcing that. Now, would it be as serious as, you know, violating a policy that's in the policy manual? Maybe not in terms of legal liability, someone suing you, something like that. But I would be very reticent to act in that way and to make exceptions unless there's language in there that says that there's some discretion built into the process. And so maybe if the issue is we want to be able to have some discretion, maybe it's revisiting that language and saying, you know, maybe there's some room here for exceptions. Maybe we don't want the manual to be written as harshly as it might be written. But I think in terms of enforcement, I would be very hesitant to enforce it differently for different students. I think you're bound to it if it's out there, if it's accepted.
Are you really asking what's the board's involvement with enforcement, Ryan?
No, I'm trying to get clarification still on whether this is truly a policy or if this is truly a practice. and what the liability is in either case.
Well,
So because we've talked about, okay, well, there's gonna be deviations from what's written here. Things like action plans for students rather than suspension. Coaches and instructors deviating from what's stated as the suspension policy for vacations. Again, just looking for what the attorney would suggest as far as how to cover us when we deviate from that. It's already been stated that some coaches are going to follow that vacation policy very strictly. Other coaches are not going to follow it at all. It's up to their discretion, which to me says this is a practice at this point in time. But again, there's the verbiage isn't in there for
Yeah,
that.
so
So
I think I can provide some clarity for you. Coaches won't have an option, right, of whether or not. So what I'm hearing is that fairness and consistency with whatever language is in the handbook is how we operate, right? I think what we have agreed on is that we're gonna go back and make sure that there's some language in there that allows for, I forget the language. you used.
deviation,
Discretion.
Discretion, sorry. thank
Yeah.
you, Discretion, right? That has to be in there.
Yeah.
That's a protection for everybody. And I think it has to be in there because there will be circumstances, right, where a child is busting their hump, yet maybe just not at that 65 yet, right? And that has to be recognized too.
I think part of the problem that when we already read that is, well, there's the academic piece to it, which I think is kind of vital. But when we're talking about missing our practice due to a vacation, how's that really an academic issue, if you will? I think you go from wanting students to do well in school as part of that policy, but then saying, oh, because you missed something due to a family vacation, an absence. That's where I think the discretion has to start coming into play. We probably have less discretion on the education piece, the grade piece, whatnot. But when it comes to the education piece, that's where I think, once again, we have to talk about more about discretion. And the discretion of the coach or whoever, because to me, it's more important how they're doing in school than if they take a day off and miss practice because they want to have family vacation.
I guess, well, here's what I would say,
That's where.
right? And I think I love your opinion on it, right? But that's where it resides as your opinion. The board will never be in a position to have to say discretion should be granted for this child going on family vacation versus this child who just skipped practice. You'll never be put in a position to have to make that decision. That will happen at the leadership level.
And I think that comes down to sort of the process. So I think like an analogy to me as I'm thinking about this is the student code of conduct. So in the student code of conduct, it lists, here are the things that we consider to be violations of our district's sort of policy for students and how their behavioral contract, essentially, these are violations. But built into the code, there's a lot of discretion in there for how each building administrator is going to apply the code of conduct and to
Tech issue, sorry. That's my bad.
apply the code of conduct. Are they going to give 5 days? Are they going to give 10 days? A lot of discipline, it's dependent upon the student's prior disciplinary record, whether there's been discipline before and it doesn't seem to be catching on. And so this is what I'm talking about, the actual language of that athletic code. If built into there is this idea that, coaches have the discretion to, permit students to play in games if they have been absent for X number of days. Maybe it's revising it so that there's a range, there's different ways that you can word it, but my opinion would be if you've got something that's really black and white and two kids do the same thing, you've got to enforce it equally.
Right way.
And so I think and I think, again, talking about that sort of shared authority and shared responsibility. So this is where it would be helpful. You do have a conversation with the coaches, the athletic director. Is there a recommendation? And that could come up through Scott to the board of what they think is appropriate. And like I said, you're relying on their expertise and you're relying on what they see day to day and how this impacts students. And like you said, if this is really causing problems and kids are missing out, that's something that should be communicated up to you to hear about that. But yeah, I think,
So you, based upon what you're hearing, and what I'm hearing you say, is that, again, we should be at a much higher level with a policy and not get granular with, that's a practice. Putting that into play is practice. Our policy should be that we're going to have an extracurricular code of conduct that includes a vacation and academic policy, or a timed miss and academic policy. That's our job as the board. We put that into policy, then that document is written. It becomes a practice, right? But what you're also saying is that the board should be aware of said document before said document goes into play. But so am I getting that right? Am I hearing you
yeah,
correctly?
so I don't, again, this is one of those documents that's somewhere in the middle where, because it's not a board policy, it's not, it's not required to be in the manual. It's not necessarily required by law that you are the one approving it and adopting it. So there are some policies. So the student code of conduct, that's actually something that it's not, it doesn't have to be a board policy, but it does have to be approved by the board. That's in the law.
That's priority.
That's the, yeah,
So there are certain things that do have to come to the board by law. Something like an athletic code, a lot of school districts don't even have them.
we didn't either.
Right, so they rely upon, the district code of conduct. If you're suspended from school, you're suspended from sports, etc. If you have one, it's sort of up to the district how it comes into being, the input that's required. So there's nothing that says the board must review it and adopt it officially. There's nothing that says you can't review it either and can't have input on it. But because it's not a board policy, because it's not one of those documents that the law says you have to officially adopt, it may not work its way all the way up. It may not be something that you're sitting down and reviewing line by line before it's approved. But again, there's that shared authority, there's the back and forth communication. I think if there are concerns, like concerns can come through Scott, but you guys also can get concerns from parents and community members coming through you. So I think that communication can work both ways. If you were hearing complaints about this and saying, this isn't really working for people, that communication is certainly should happen. And maybe, it results in, again, the language being revised, putting in some discretion. But in terms of whether it must come to the board, I would say no.
That's kind of where it started, is shouldn't this have gone to the board first? We didn't know, right? So that's why we've asked, and as we continue and things pop up from time to time, and Scott says it's practice, and we say, well, gee, shouldn't that be, and vice versa. And that's why we asked for you to come in today to help provide some clarification.
I hope that I have.
Uh,
I hope that I
Yeah,
have.
well,
More.
we did have a specific example that we were specifically looking for clarification on, but another example is if the school wanted to start having I don't know, a special day. I don't know what it is, but a special event day,
Mhm.
any special event day, again, that would be a practice. There would be no policy around that.
Sure.
Right? Again, right? So it just comes down to, we were unsure when we have to be involved and truly what the difference between policy and practice was. And I think you describing it is really at the high level, in broad, in general,
Mhm.
and not specific, that the granularization, probably not the right word.
Is it
The clarity of it, yeah, the steps involved.
Yeah.
With it really rolls down to the administrative team, and it's up to them to put it in place. But I'm also hearing that, even though we don't have responsibility for it, we should probably be involved on some
Sure.
level, right?
And that's that sort of the board authority and the board duties of providing oversight. So if you're hearing about issues, if you're concerned about a certain issue in school, even if it's not a legally required policy, that's still a concern that you can bring to Scott and say, what's going on with this? What's happening at the building level? Is this something, because we are going to go through the legally required policies, but there's only 50 of them. There's plenty more policies in there that no law requires you to have. You have them maybe for political reasons, for cultural reasons, historical reasons, whatever it might be, that they're helpful, that they provide useful information to people. that they communicate goals of district. And if something comes up and you think, I really think this should be a policy, that's something we can talk about, and that's something we could potentially put in place. So I think, again, I think there's some back and forth to it, and there's shared responsibility there. But if something, comes up that's not legally required to be approved by the board, it may kind of percolate around at the building level for a while before it comes before you in any form. I think that's a natural thing to happen.
And I want to, I appreciate the discussion and the clarification, but I think it's also important to realize that one of the common themes that we see is that things are communicated often. It's usually negative things are communicated to board members. And oftentimes those things have zero to do with what the board's responsibilities are. So it's important to make sure that we're constantly saying that's a building level issue, start there. And if it rises to us, then we'll deal with it appropriately. Given the discussion this evening, I think that's pretty clear with the athletic handbook. If there are issues, and we know there have been issues and wording and some new iterations of it are going to come out without question, those should be directed to the building level or to the athletic director level. And then as we move forward and interact with the document and with the practice, then it can rise to us if it's something that we should handle. So yeah, I think it's great clarification, and I think it's great, Lindsay, that you've shared, our vision for evaluating our policies, the 300 plus of them that some have still existed since 1978. But that's important. So,
I had a question or clarification.
Sure.
Because it seems every fall I'm contacted by usually parents of girls, daughters, about the student code of conduct, specifically the outdated dress code.
Okay.
So you're saying that the student code of conduct is not a required board policy, but needs to be approved by the school board.
You are, right? It's a weird one. You're required to have one.
Oh, right.
You're required to have one. It is not required to be a board policy in your manual,
Okay.
but you're required to have it, and the board is responsible for reviewing it, approving it, adopting it every single year. Actually, they're supposed to review it annually.
And then,
Yeah.
so when you presented the slide on regulations that said student issues in flux. So wouldn't the student code of conduct be a regulation, not policy?
The code of conduct is kind of an entity unto itself.
Yeah,
It's
it's always an issue in the fall,
yeah.
and
I mean, it's something we can certainly look at. I will tell you, I review probably 30 codes a year from different school districts, and dress code's a big one. We've seen recommendations come down from SED about trying to make those dress codes, both the language itself gender neutral, but also the actual application of it to not be discriminatory.
well, it's dress
Gender.
codes, it's swimsuits, it's bad.
Yeah. No, and it is a big issue in my, my personal preference when I'm
And I'm
reviewing those.
contacted it
Yeah.
every year, and I'm always like, go talk to your building principal, but I was just curious. I wrote, is it policy or regulation?
So that is something that's within the purview of the board. If
Right,
you're
Yeah.
interested in revising
but
that.
right now it's in the board policy.
Okay.
The student code of conduct. I don't think any student has ever read it, but. So
But-
I was just curious, because according to the regulation slide, I felt it was more regulation and not.
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing about that code of conduct is you are supposed to review it annually, and so there is, the opportunity for, as things change, as some styles change. I mean, I've had codes that the dress code used to say, no exposed midriffs, and some of the superintendents just gave up, being like, that's the style, you can't even buy a top that covers your midriff. So it does change, but
Yeah.
it is supposed to be reviewed annually, so it can change.
Well, I think that as we move forward with trying to reevaluate our policies, our admin team has been working to develop systems so that we have consistency and continuity. And I think that, we should have policy that identifies how we move forward with evaluating that code of conduct on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so that we have consistency year over year and have guidance, legal guidance and how we have that language that gives us the most latitude, so to
Mhm.
speak, with
Sure.
developing that code of conduct.
Yeah, this is my last year on the board. I would love to see the conduct review.
Yeah, no, that's, I
I'm
mean,
not
that's,
on the committee anymore.
Okay.
Maybe that's why.
yeah,
I'm
that's
not
definitely
sure.
something our office can help with the review.
Borough Prince has a copy of our code of conduct. And are making recommendations for the code, which by the way was written by lawyers that now work for our friends.
There you go.
We just had some new folks join.
Awesome. Anything in closing?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Travels back, watch out for the deer.
Thank you.
No.
I will. I will.
I just hit one a couple weeks ago.
Oh, gee.
Thank
Thank you.
Last year.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good conversation. Thank you for that. Hopefully you moved, if you were at a 2 out of 5 with clarity, you're at least at a 3 out of 5. Right? Anything on that topic?
Yeah, really, it just really clarified to me that we shouldn't get granular. We're not the granular part of that. If we want something in policy, we put a very broad, general policy out there. And then it's up to you or these folks over here to write that practice of that policy. So,
And we would always do that in concert with the legal, right? Those are the ones that really understand the ability at a different level.
yeah,
So we don't get in the business of writing policy.
Yeah.
Somebody has.
And then also using the term, not using the term policy in the handbook, right, and using practice.
practice,
Right.
right,
Right.
right,
Or regulation.
or regulation,
Regulation.
right.
Right.
Because people hear policy, they automatically think board, right?
Right.
So that's your policy. No, it's not our policy. It's a practice.
And just to review this, when I sent that to you, I right clicked and copied and saved as policy. That's why it said policy. If you look at the cover, it doesn't say policy, right? It's like the handbook. So again, that was probably the springboard.
And she just firmed up some of the things we already talked about. We do need to get a little more general with the language. We don't want to put ourselves in a situation where it's black and white.
A range, not black.
Well, one of the biggest things, because I do a lot, I do audits for the bank.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at the practices that are put in place to enforce the policies. So there's a big difference with policy practice, and to her point, you need to have in that policy a level of discretion. Because you're the superintendent, we need to give you the discretion to act in certain ways that you feel appropriate. Based on your knowledge, based on your experience, based on everything your expertise. And I think we got, as a board, realize and look at is that you have that expertise in what you're doing. And we got to allow you to use that expertise in fulfilling the policies and when that discretion is in allowing the principals, the athletic directors, all of them, that discretion of how they implement the policy.
Yeah, and I think just as a natural practice, like that we are, I think engaged in really district-wide right now is that we're not pulling things from thin air, right? We're using best practice, we're using research-based practice. The executive director of this reviewed that athletic handbook prior to us putting it in place. We looked at exemplars that were out there, right? It was in alignment with all of those. So I mean, some of that stuff, right, has been vetted already. So in our minds, yeah, we're ready to go with it. We know we'll have to make some adjustments to the language moving forward, but we spoke to the timing piece. Brian, I just want to speak to your point about board involvement, right? What I missed was an opportunity to put that in front of you guys to say, hey, this is coming, right? And I want you to know that, right? And so I have learned from that. There are certain things, especially in the area of athletics, right? That I'm gonna make sure I put in front of your nose prior to it going live, okay, moving forward. But again, the pace that we're running, It's crazy time right now, so we missed it. And we'll be back.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. She said that, yes, practice is at the building level responsibility or administrative responsibility. The board should be aware, right? So
Yeah.
as long as we close that communication gap, I think we can be fine going forward. And, you know, your expectation should be, we're gonna provide some feedback from time to time on it. It may not agree with the practice in its entirety. It's your job to digest that. If you feel the changes should be made, or the principals feel the changes should be made, then do it. If you don't, I guess you don't,
Yes.
right? Because we can't get involved that deep. That's not our job.
Not at all.
You'll see the next iteration of it, before we get it out.
That's what I was just saying to Lucy, where the new. Before the athletic handbook is handed out for the winter sports, can we just see,
100%.
Okay.
It's almost ready.
yeah,
By the way, fall sports are almost over. Did we have any issues? Okay. Good to know. Have we seen a more, an improvement in, and you might not have been able to measure this yet, but has there been an improvement in the classroom because of the potential loss of participation?
5-week progress reports are coming out very soon.
I'll test to the fact that yes, it has.
In your home,
In my home,
okay,
in my home, it has made a significant impact,
which is the end goal, right? Right?
significant. Yes.
both my kids are in here.
So,
One of my
And-
kids. with them.
you know, it has worked. So having two kids on two different football teams. There's some carnage because of it. Okay, but it's a growth thing. It has to happen. We have to have that rigor there. I know that the JV team has seen some results from that. But it's made a positive impact in my house, and I know it has really made students be more cognizant of their actions at school and their academic.
The one thing I would speak to is just creating more dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Between coaches, teachers, parents, right? It's
Yeah.
creating a lot more eyes. to Watch again.
And marching bands. Did they sign the handbook too, or they,
We're still working on that process for extra.
okay,
Yeah, and this is eventually gonna be cross board, right? Any after school activity.
Yep, and I think what you heard her say was, remember, these are considered privileged. This isn't a guaranteed right for every single child. I mean, who's like their.
so it could even be more general instead of calling it athletic handbook after school activity or.
The next.
I get so
iteration.
sick of hearing about athletics.
That's an official, I wish we had contact with parents. but-
Yeah.
There's a piece in there about conduct while at a game, right? Because parents are setting up on them as well.
I would agree that the conversation that the coaches I've interacted with have really jumped wholeheartedly into this, and they're involved in making sure their student athletes are doing what they should be at school. So, you know, I've seen that, and the coaches appreciate having the handbook. And
I'll be interested to see the revamp. I can't wait to see it.
Absolutely, yeah, so, I'm not gonna take any huge leaps at the 5-week mark, but certainly at the 10-week mark, you guys will see where we are academically. Specifically their secondary level.
It's great.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right, well, thank you for that conversation. Drum roll, please. So Mr. Jake Resnick and Jaylene, what's your last name?
Allen.
Allen, that's right, sorry, I knew that. Jaylene from BT Bosse's, that are responsible for management of our managed IT, are here tonight. Do a little presentation on current state of operations. Jake, take it away.
Get serious and take the Burberry off. Great, so I appreciate the introduction. Jake Resnick, I'm the associate coordinator here. Jaylene is my boss, so, you know, talk to me outside of here if you have any issues, and slip you a 20, make sure everything's kosher.
Remember, you may report.
Exactly, yes. Not worried about it. We'll delete that file. It's the benefit of IT. So just wanted to, do a quick introduction, who am I? What am I? Some of you know me as Jake from State Farm. If you've worked here or if heard me getting called over the loudspeaker, my friends would refer to me as Rez. Downstater, born in the city, then came up to good old SUNY Oneonta, got to experience life upstate. Graduated from there, got my degree in education, taught downstate, Yonkers, for 2 years, and then I got an opportunity to come back here as a grad assistant, coach college lacrosse, and things sort of just fell into place that I found here. I think most importantly, proud dog dad. It's my little boy Theo, Brittany Spaniel. Hanging out with Scott today, talking about got a little cut over his eye because he had to rip a groundhog out of its hole, naturally, as one does as a hunting dog. And then I like to golf around here, Kaniswata or Bluestone. I usually was in the Bluestone League, so I guess that's my home course for up here. Prefer Sleepy Hollow Country Club if we're downstate. Anyone who's gotten an email from me, you're gonna hear squad, right? Squad, that's that's just my generic term for team. But we have a really awesome squad here at Norwich specifically, and it's we use a distributed leadership model as far as it's not Rez the tyrant over here, just making decisions, not talking with administrators, teachers, admin, my manager, my technicians. Not only that, it truly is a team effort, right? It takes a village, a classic saying. I mean, in a school district, especially how much technology is relied upon. I mean, truly almost every single piece of this entire school, whether it's a boiler, air conditioner, lights, involves IT at some sort of level. So having those conversations, not just having one person making these decisions, I'd say that's incredibly important. So what does our actual team makeup look like? Right there, that's our regional manager, the one, the only Jaylene Allen. I'm the coordinator for this district. And then I have my partner in crime for the data side of things is Deb Stevens. So whether it's school tool, rostering, Arwada, whatever the necessity may be for data, Deb is our lady. She grinds it out. I mean, I did, tip my hat to her. The amount of data, I'm sure you guys can all imagine how much data is getting pumped in daily, minute by minute into the school. And to have someone who's there as a point person to organize that, have those conversations with HR, business, superintendents, she plays as integral a role as any cog in our wheel. Then we have a bunch of technicians, right? Deb Phelps has something going wrong in her class. I'll send out, one of the field techs. They're, experts in the field, hands-on type of guys, can handle hardware, networking, whatever it may be, truly jacks of all trades. So we've got 2 PC LAN techs, these are civil service jobs. So technically they're called PC LAN techs. We have 1 roaming tech. He's an elevated PC LAN tech. He's someone who throughout the entire BT, DCMO, ONC region, if something is really giving one of those field techs an issue, they call an Ernie. We're lucky enough to have Ernie here. Obviously, as districts need, right? Unitigo might have an issue that their tech's just been slamming their head against the wall for 3 days, and they're like, Jake, we need Ernie, right? So he's been a huge resource here. Exactly, literally like bring in the lefty. We need Ernie. So fought hard to get him here. He's been a huge benefit. He's as trusted an ally as I've got out here. Then we have two young bloods. One of them a recent, as of June graduate, Nate Revoir, another student from Green, former student from Gene, Jeb Trepa. Those 2 are IT assistants currently, 19 and a half hours a week. We're, ideally, this is sort of a training, grooming process. They started as summer workers here. Both of these 2 actually interned here in April. Honestly, they both did a great job. So sort of pass the message along to the powers that be. And it's like, hey, I know we're expanding always. I think we got 2 pretty good ones that are right here in the DCMO region. So we've been, super fortunate to have them. And honestly, I love having someone who's went to school here, right? He understands his community. He is a friendly face that's entering the classroom. So been a real blessing to have those 2 guys. And then we also have 2 instructional tech integrators. So these are people who work directly with teachers, right? They're not ripping the computer apart, swapping out an SSD and getting all nerdy on you, but they're gonna say, all right, this really nice Promethean board that we have over here, how can we best use that inside your classroom? How can we use this piece of technology to give your students a better opportunity to learn? And I think that's one of the most important pieces, right? Is there's a lot going on, a lot behind the scenes, but, inevitably, myself included, former educator, I mean, we're all here, I hope, at least because we care about kids. And, their education is my, why, right? Like there's a lot of other technology jobs in this world. I choose this because I love, I was talking to Scott today, I love working in a school, right? Like I'm a downstater, all my friends live in the city, I love being in a school. I love working with kids. I love helping kids. And that's what really drives me for my job.
Jake, real quick,
Talk to me.
what's this? I'm teaching social studies in high school. I have an issue. How do I get a hold of Jake Resnick?
Right. Oh, well, there's some knock on the door, but however, we do have the preferred method would be our ticketing system, right? So teachers all have access. We have, it's called SSO, single sign-on, my apps, right? It's like their hub of life. Every teacher has that right on their desktop, and click on that, go right to ServiceNow, enter a ticket. Hey, just do a quick little description. Hi, my Promethean board's not working when I'm trying to do screen share. Could we have a tech come over as quickly as possible? Or even maybe you're in a situation where your computer isn't working and you can't enter that ticket personally, right? We have a service desk as well. So you call 766-3800 and they will either walk you through, they will troubleshoot with you via the phone, see what, if it's an issue that they can fix, right? They're going to knock that out right there. I'll never even, outside of like an email saying like, hey, a ticket in your district was completed, right? Like there's things that I might even get my hands on, but that's, I guess, and I'll get into it a little bit more, right? It's not just the people here in the field. It's not just the regional manager. We have an army, right? We call it the Hill, and that's where I'm technically a Broome Tioga employee, even though, we're DCMO region. We call it the Hill down at Broome Tioga BOCES, right? We've got a whole team. Now some of them are, working remotely as well, but there is almost always someone who can, whether it be.
And Jake, the turnaround time is amazing. I know when the Promethean boards were installed in the summertime and then we started school in the fall, it was, a quick learning process. But you guys were a phone call away or a tech away. I remember one morning last year walking in and thinking, oh my gosh, I can't get my Promethean board to work. My lessons are on there. And by late morning, I had a tech in there. It was good to go. So your turnaround time has been amazing.
Jillian, just to be clear, as of June last year, she was teaching.
I'm not doing house call.
I wondered what he bribed her with.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jake from State Farm was his nickname.
Okay.
My little guys and girls, yes.
Exactly, right?
That's Jake from State Farm.
Just as a follow-up, what happens is as soon as that ticket is completed, though, you'll get an email
Yeah.
to say everything's been closed, right? So there's a really nice cycle there that teachers are part of.
Exactly. And we can't, do the sketchy, like, oh, I'll try and close this and, kind of keep it on the radar, right? Like whoever enters the ticket, whoever's attached to that ticket, when that ticket gets closed, there's no hiding it, trying to, pass this one off type of deal. It's, it says, to the second, what time the ticket was entered. We obviously try and triage them, hey, sometimes there's an emergency. I've gotten calls, hey, power got knocked out on a Sunday night. We've got some major issues, right? That's immediately going to get put to the top of my docket. And part of our ticketing system, right, is our service desk, myself, whoever's seeing those tickets, you can, elevate them. High priority, medium priority, low priority. So you see that high priority ticket come in, you're getting notifications everywhere. So
Your final ticket does ask for teacher input or staff input too. How did we do? Which I thought was great.
yeah, we try and I say it, often, I try and be an open book, right? Whatever it is, good or bad, I got nothing to hide. I am, we try and do our best no matter what. I'm sure, we've missed the ball, dropped the ball a couple times, but it's not from a lack of effort. It's not from a lack of trying. So that much I can certainly promise you. So what is, Scott said, part of managed IT, we're, as we are in education, we're really into acronyms, MITS, Managed IT Services. We really do it all, whether it's user accounts, Gmail, Microsoft Office. This is my app that I was talking about. Single sign-on goes for students as well as teachers, right? So all the kids' applications, right? If it's, whether it be NWEA or Google Classroom, right? It's all housed in one location. Try and make it as simple, as possible. We've got our help desk. That's what I was talking about before, right? Even, if you're in that weird situation where, dang, my computer is not working, hey, I'd like to say things work all the time, but sometimes things break. Maybe you dropped in the parking lot, allegedly. It was a kid who did it, but we got you on camera and you dropped in the parking lot, right? If you had that, you just call 766-3800 and, they can enter that ticket for you, which will then get sent to my team, and then we can take care of you, even if your device isn't working. Planning, project management, Deb talked about installing all these Promethean boards, right? That wasn't just a flip of the coin, we'll do it Tuesday type of deal, right? That's me having conversations with Brian, having conversations with Mr. Ryan, Jess Poyer, right? Hey, what is our end goal? What are we trying to facilitate in these classrooms? We also have our budgets, right? Brian and I meet every Thursday, talk about budget lines. There's a couple different budgets that we work from. One's called RIC-D. That's for our, non-instructional technology, whether it be, an administrator, maybe it's just a copy or something that's direct, not directly impacting a student. That'd be through a RIC-D budget. Then we have ITD, which is our instructional tech budget. So if I'm buying Deb, a laptop, Chromebooks for the students, iPads for the youths, whatever it may be, right? We would be purchasing that through our ITD budget. IT sourcing, whether, it's something that we can do here, reach out to an external vendor to help you out. That's also, right. We work with Clever, right? As things are rostered through School Tool, right? It's not just us doing it. We might be working with another company using their, I'm not gonna get too nerdy, using their technology to bridge that gap. On-site support, right? You need us anytime we can get to you as quickly as possible. We're gonna do that. IT inventory, this is a huge part of what we do, right? Anything that's purchased through this school that is managed by us, whether it's through those two budgets I mentioned, or through, a local budget, grant, whatever it may be. If we're buying laptops through a grant that are gonna be managed by us, as those come in, we're tagging them with IT tags, loading up all that information into ServiceNow, so that if and when we do get audited, we have a nice report to show them that, hey, this was purchased on to the date, by the minute, when it was entered. And part of that on ServiceNow, right? I get a ticket assigned to me saying, hey, I know you just got this huge order in. This is the PO number for it. I need you to send me every single tag, every single serial number, and our purchasing agents make sure that all lines up to a penny, right? So if that iPad costs $290.11, you're going to see that line right there. It has to have an IT tag associated it, serial number associated to it, and you can't duplicate. No matter, the system does not allow, so you can't just farce it, do a little fudging of the numbers, doesn't work like that. That's on purpose. Firewall filtering, right? Making sure that we keep things as safe as possible. Sometimes it can be frustrating because we definitely have our teeth in there pretty deep, but it's all for a greater effort, we hope. Archiving, right? Even if someone accidentally deletes all their emails, their documents, their file, oh my God, I hit the wrong button, all my files are gone, right? It's just a ticket away. Just to take it away. No need to panic. We've walked many off the ledge as they've been nervous, being like, Jake, I don't know what I did. I clicked the wrong button. Like literally all my, 10 years worth of files, lessons gone. Don't worry. Get a ticket in, send it to the Hill, and our guys will usually it takes an hour or two. They say, hey, give us as much detail as possible and we will get things cooking for you. device management, wireless management, networks all sort of tying together, right? Whether it be, this access points up here, Miss Pam's device right there, Brian's device. We're overseeing all of that, right? And in the field, right, you'll have that on-site support, but we've got people literally nonstop checking APs. When we do a patch night, I always get an email like, hey, so-and-so VoIP appliances went down during, the patch as they're supposed to. They've all come back up, right? There's many of checks and balances throughout our system. Anyone, I know that was a lot. Does anyone have any questions on that? I'll try and be quick, so I don't want you guys here all night. Device replacement is a huge part of what we do, right? It's, like I said, I mean, especially since COVID, every kid has a device. Others, some are treated better than others, but we generally, right, as we're purchasing, part of the IPA, which is an installment purchase agreement, essentially like a loan through a bank to purchase devices. We generally do those every year. Part of those requirements is the device has to have a life expectancy of 5 years. I can't buy some, second-rate used machine that's only going to have, maybe a life expectancy of 2 years, right? I'm not going to be able to purchase something like that. So how do we go through this whole process? What does that process look like? I'm going to jump ahead just so you can see a quick visual, and I'll jump back, right? I've got this crazy spreadsheet through years, all the PO numbers, right? And that's all considered through, these meetings that we're having constantly with Mr. Ryan, Brian, and Jess, as well as our instructional technology specialists, right? What are the future needs? Like, right? We're not just thinking, hey, what can we do to get by, right? We're trying to plan 3-4 years ahead down the line. What is going to be cutting edge down the line? As far as the, physical devices here, as far as kids, teachers, right? Wear and tear is a huge, that has a huge impact on these devices. It's especially, with devices going home, I'd say having a 5-year life expectancy is getting shorter by the day, as far as practicality, right? In theory, that device should surely live 5 years, but there's I once was young as well, and I'm not sure how responsible I would have been with a Chromebook, but it is part of, it is constant, right? I'm constantly overlooking. I'm looking through, I have like all these dashboards set up in ServiceNow, like, hey, what are we looking for? Like, how many of these devices are missing? How many are pending repair, right? That impacts directly, I'm trying to be fiscally responsible. If I could not spend extra money, right? Maybe we can Frankenstein a couple devices together to get the, devices into a student's hand. That's very important. And then, right, missing devices, everyone, kids in Norwich on Friday and down in Texas on Monday. Odds are we're probably not going to see that device again, right? So that all gets factored into the equation of, what are we going to need for our next purchasing cycle? And then just a couple purchasing methods. We have E-rate. It's actually, you all pay for that. It's federal tax through your cell phone bills. That gets, and then they divvy out that money. It's all aidable. So Brian and I recently, we got all our teachers' aides never had devices before. So through part of E-rate, ECF, the Emergency Connectivity Fund, we were able to get money through E-rate. And now every single TA, teacher's assistant at Norwich Central School District, has a device, right? That was all part of that. We're going to have outdoor access points throughout the entire district, right? Whether you're, for me, when I first started here, there's a great courtyard in the middle school, and you'd see kids, like, teachers are trying to take them out there, and they're like hanging the Chromebook by the window, trying to bleed off like the AP inside, right? This, in a very short, November 2nd, they're coming out to finish it. This is going to be like a college campus. Students will be able to roam freely throughout the outside of the campus, connected, able to learn, whether they decide to learn or not. That's another question. Like I said before, we have our RICD, ITD budgets, IPA, unfortunately, not the type we enjoy on our Friday nights. And then there's also, local budgets, grants, whatever there may be. Any questions on that? So as far as what type of tech is actually in Norwich Central School District, Sarah, Casey, they wrote this long blurb, but the theory with them, right? Anytime a staff member needs help, they can book a one-on-one meeting with them, right? They send out emails almost daily, just, hey, you know, whether they be updates, hey, this is something we're working on, it's coming down the line. Book us if you wanna, even if it's, you know, even if it's just a quick 5-10 minute, you know, session just to review some things, right? They're there literally just to help teachers, right?
And
They
remember,
were,
this became increasingly important over the last 2 years. Because we share so much virtual. And I think, you know, this is a service that we purchased. So just want you to understand the scope.
yeah, and then, I mean, as far as what type of tech we have in the buildings right now, we have 103 Prometheans across our 4 academic buildings. I mean, those have been an awesome step up, right? Like, used to be smart boards in the classroom. The teachers would have to have all their lights off so that they could actually maybe see what was on the board. The sound was questionable, right? We've got one of these awesome machines in every room. Makerspace is in the works as we speak. I mean, the district's working on, you know, creating the perfect spot, but right now we've got a lot of awesome stuff ready to roll. We have a laser engraver. So kids can take, you know, a piece of wood, create their own design, you know, maybe it's a coaster or whatever for mom, something, you know, you could give mom for a Christmas gift or whatever, right? We want to give these students the opportunity to do this and have that in class. So we've got a laser graver, we have 4 3D printers, we have, it's called Doughbots, but it mimics an assembly line. So you've got, you know, you truly starts to get processed here. There's literally a mini assembly line. You can work with these small robots, manipulate things, and then press out, you know, we're not making a Ford F-150, but, you know, we can make small trinkets and, you know. Yeah, exactly. Yet. So that's been awesome. This year, we really stepped it up as far as linking, you know, technology in the classroom. We have a drone aviation course. First time we've ever rolled that out. At the end of this course, students, you know, our Norwich students will be able to take their FAA certification to be licensed drone pilots, you know, and hopefully get a job doing that in the community. So you could be 14, you know, take this aviation course, take your FAA certification and be getting paid to fly drones.
Starting pay for someone in drone aviation, $75,000.
Can my husband take this class?
Yeah. You can speak with Mr. Ryan about that. And then, you know, one of the other, it used to be here in the past, I believe, before my tenure, but we brought back Project Lead the Way. That is sort of, you know, the marquee for engineering courses. It's created by MIT. They basically, you know, they give a set of guidelines. You know, the teacher obviously has their own, you know, they can take their own course throughout that, but it's a pretty nice setup as far as guidelines. And, you know, we, whether it be, you know, CAD, Fusion 360, you know, these are kids who we're hoping that are going to be, you know, future engineers. And, you know, we're happy to be able to offer that here at Norwich CSD. We're also offering a digital art course. So each student here who's in this digital art course has access to the Adobe Creative Cloud. And with that, not only do they have access here on our managed devices, but they can use that license at their own home, phone, wherever they may be. So I think that's a huge advantage. And the same thing with PLTW. We have it set up through AWS, Amazon Web Services. So, you know, that kid who's really eager, right? We have these awesome machines for PLTW. They're supercomputers. They can handle it all. But, you know, maybe not everyone has that at home, you know, myself included, right? I'd love to have a $4,000 gaming PC, but I get by with what I got. These students have the ability on their Chromebook, right? They doesn't need to be a, you know, super high level laptop. On a Chromebook, they can open up the Amazon Web Services and, you know, you're basically looking through a window. The Amazon servers are doing all the work and they're basically projecting an image onto the Chromebook for the kid. It's amazing, right? So that kid who wants to finish his PLTW project, he doesn't have to wait to that next day in school. If he wants to go home and tinker all night, like, you know, more power to you. So I think that's been an awesome, an awesome piece that we didn't, we had PLTW before, but we didn't have that added, secondary thing to, really encourage kids to do it at home. So the same thing's available with digital art. Any of those kids can use Photoshop at home on their Chromebook. We've also, first year, had app creators class. So over in the middle school, this is sort of, it's like, I call it PLTW Lite. It's a younger version of PLTW. It's getting them ready to inevitably, be a high school student, getting into those engineering courses. We also have esports, right? So I know that's probably like a hot topic, but it's something that we're really proud of. I mean, esports, I would get yelled at often for playing too many video games, but now I can tell my mom, well, hey, it ended up paying off, all right? Because I mean, some of the, these streamers, they're making millions of dollars, and colleges are offering scholarships, just like they would for traditional, I played college lacrosse, probably should have played esports, right? My knees would feel a lot better and I would have a lot more fun. And with that, even today I was working with him, Finn Monroe, we got him what's called the quad stick. So if those aren't familiar, Finn had an accident. He was, he doesn't really have use of his extremities. So this contraption works, it's mount, he's got a mount, goes up to his face, and it has different inputs. So if he blows into this tube while pressing a button on the back with his chin, right, that might be an A button. Whereas if he blows out on that tube while pressing the button, that might be B. And if he's not holding that button and blows out, that could be an X button, right? So we worked with him, mapped this all out so that he has his own, like, basically controller, right? And he's, I told him, hey, use this, want you to take this home, get really familiar with it. I can promise you he's an avid gamer, right? Using this, right? So that's, once again, right? That's why we're here. It's kids, don't get me wrong. I love being able to, provide laptops and Chromebooks and all that, but right. That's the meat and potatoes of this, right? That's what we're here for. It's actually changed people's lives, right? And today, we're getting him set up now to be part of the esports club. It's not, it's a club. So we're just working with him and his OT, making sure that, hey, we've got things moved over, tables in place. We're ordering a mount for him specific for that room. So, I mean, I'm hopeful in the next month or two, we're going to have him be part of our esports club. So looking forward to that. And then last thing, it's account automation. This has been huge. I mean, it's made my life a million times better. It just keeps things clean. So the second a staff member and or student is entered into School Tool, that's like the learning management system. The second, whether it be Lauren Van Beers over here entering a staff member or Kim Hackett over here entering a student, through ServiceNow, a ticket is automatically generated. Hey, this person, a new account's been set up. It's, lists all these requirements for my team on the Hill to take care of. Hey, they need access to School Tool. They need access to Google Classroom, And then through part of that workflow, that automation, as soon as they're done with that piece, they close that ticket, it automatically generates a ticket for us to get that, whether it's a staff member or teacher, a device. The same thing happens if someone's off-boarded or a student leaves. Student gets removed from School Tool, staff member gets removed from School Tool, a ticket's automatically generated. Hey, Chris Olds just left the district. We're going to need you to pick up his device. So it's been, instead of, Brian, Deb Phelps, when did she leave? Was that June or July? I don't think we ever got right. So now I've got a ticket in my queue saying like, hey, we need to go get Deb Phelps's laptop. We need to, someone else is going to need that the following year. And I think, one of the most important things we've done since I got here is really upgrading safety and security, right? Doesn't get much more, I don't have kids, but I don't think there's anything more important to parents than their own children, and keeping them safe is something that's, I think important to everyone in this room. So we've done major upgrades to security over the last couple of years. We have cameras on all the exteriors of the building, essentially 360 coverage on every building on the outside as well as the inside. And these cameras can be accessed whether it's Wes Mills in his office or remotely, right? We have him set up with the cloud service. So Wes Mills goes home, Scott Ryan says like, hey, during the high school basketball game, there's some riffraff going on. You think you can check it out? Wes can just log in right there, pull up a camera. Hey, oh, Scott, where was it? Middle school. All right. Goes to his middle school tree and there's right there. Middle school gym, pulls up that camera. Not only can he watch it in live time, but he can go back and watch recorded videos up to 90 days. So anything that happened in the last 90 days, he can go in there. And I mean, you can literally like go through it by a millisecond by millisecond by millisecond, as slow a frame as you'd like, and extract whatever you need from that video. And then I think one of the, now I work at Sydney too, and I feel spoiled that I have this badge. Not only having a badge is, not only is it convenient, which I've learned pretty quickly, because now I've got like this whole ream of keys that I'm always like fumbling through. But I mean, it's all about security inevitably, right? So these badges are all controlled through an access management system. And, every time a badge gets swiped, there is a log showing where that, whose badge swiped what door. They can check in real time to see even if a door is propped. Is there a magnet strip blocking that door from getting closed? Is that right? They should be set to be locked all the time, right? For safety, but they can pull up on any moment, see, oh, looks like room, 2110, doors unlocked, right? Because you, in theory, can double swipe and keep it unlocked, but right, as far as security reasons, we keep them locked at all times. And even if there's a power outage, worst case scenario, there's some crazy attack, they cut our power, cut our Wi-Fi, these doors are set to fail locked, right? So even if there is no power, these doors could not be opened with a badge. You would need to have a master key.
I was just wondering,
Yes, and even if I'll get down to the lockdown.
like if someone stole a bag. Yeah, okay,
You could disable badges.
Exactly.
okay.
Yep, exactly. And if a badge gets reported missing, boom, you go right into the access control, deactivate, and I mean, literally instantly. And then this is all tied into a huge lockdown system, right? So whether it's, there's only certain people who can initiate the lockdown, but whether it's through a phone app, web browser, or a VoIP phone, right? You can enter a certain code into a phone and initiate a lockdown. And what's going to happen with that as the lockdown, God forbid, we never have to use it in a real situation, but as soon as that lockdown gets initiated, there's a quick moment where doors are, remain open just to get students into a classroom. Then after that, they are locked and they cannot be opened unless you have a, specific yellow badge. There's got to be some coasters behind what allows you to open those doors. So it's
From the outside though, right? You can still open it from the inside.
Correct.
correct. Yes, exactly. Sorry.
Yes, okay.
Yes, so inside you can exit, but from the outside, no one's going to be able to, get into that door unless they have a master key or have been granted access. So it's a really intricate system, but it took a lot of time and manipulating to get us to where we are now. But I think the juice has certainly been worth the squeeze. And that's it, guys. You guys, that's right out there. In case you guys aren't familiar with that look.
Jake, thank you. Just so the board is aware, it doesn't matter if it's 7:15 in the morning, that's the energy.
Yes, correct.
The juice is worth the squeeze. Yeah, I love
The
it.
straw that stirs the drink. I'm full of them.
I love it.
Haley, thank you. Anything you wanted to add?
No. I can't follow that. I really can't.
I think, just to impress the boards, the work that's happening behind the scenes, right, on a regular basis, it's truly impressive. The work that Jake does every single day, right, the demands that are placed on him, and 9 times out of 10, his response time is automatic. I just want to make sure that anytime I request to Jake, that it's a high priority.
Yeah, you already know that. You already know
I
that.
do have one question that came up and I forgot to ask earlier, but so, we do require students to, when they get a device, they have the option to have insurance on it. What's our participation rate for the insurance program? Do we know
I
that?
don't know, that's technically not a BOCES policy.
Okay,
That's a district policy, but I'm sure they could get you some numbers on that.
yeah, I'd be interested to know just, whether it's whether it's only $20, and we've had to use it.
Yes.
But
I would say, I mean, this is without, no, this isn't data driven, but I'd say the majority of people do.
Good, okay. I want to be sure that it's not a burden, that it's not, charging $20 is not preventing our students from having the insurance access. So it's just, that's a data point I'd love to know. Yeah.
There's assistance. If that ever comes to issue.
Yeah,
I just wanted to add that, I remember my first year on the board, you talked to me about the smart bond thing that was coming up. So as a parent, I'm really glad to hear about the automatic door locks and everything. I don't think we need to go into specifics, but I think that'd be a good message to send out to parents that, if something happens, doors automatically lock or something, because I know I worry about that.
I mean, understandably so.
Yeah, so that was nice. I was glad to hear that has finally happened. Yeah.
Anything else?
thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. We're hiring in this region, so if you know somebody that's in the IT field, I'll be back.
Keep this for a day.
That's my shameless
You can
plug.
keep it till the next board meeting, because that's when I'll be there.
Perfect. I'll make it work.
Yes, thanks, Russ.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Like,
Mr. Ryan, do you have anything to say?
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the superintendent's report. No, great. Okay. Number 3, discussion items. So we have 23-24 cell phone policy.
Yeah, so just again, that's a continuation, like conversation. Sure, we put on this discussion. I think what I heard last time was, really to investigate other organizations, agencies that can support that work, take it off the left. So, some of the work we're already doing in-house. And so through my investigation, what I realized is they don't exist. And so I'm going to proceed with thought exchange with our staff, with our students, and with our community to really get some viewpoints on that. So once we have that framework for what that question would look like and how we set the stage for that dialogue through thought exchange, I'll run it by the board prior to initiating that thought exchange.
Great.
Okay.
Excellent. Any questions about that or?
I actually took the time to read the article you sent to us, Scott, and even highlighted some things. But a common thread was that a lot of schools are putting phones aside in a locked pouch, or students are being allowed to bring them to school, although they have to be turned off, but it didn't say what the consequences were. And then I really liked in northern Kansas City school in Missouri, it said cell phones were the biggest obstacle to student engagement after returning from virtual learning. And the district acknowledged that students would recover more quickly from learning gaps if they were more focused during instruction. So the new policy still allowed students to bring their cell phones to school, just not allowed to use the devices in class. And then it talked about getting, it was crucial to get parents, students, and community members involved in creating the cell phone policies. And it talked about also a more positive interaction between students and teachers when these policies were in place. So those were some highlights that I came away from with the article.
And so to review, that's exactly why we're putting it as a standing item on as a discussion point. Because, from my experience, we have to have community buy-in. Because at the end of the day, we can write anything we want in policy. It is the management and enforcement of that with consistency that will really play or tax the existing administration. Right? So I don't want to get to a place where we're suspending kids because they're refusing to comply. That will happen. If we as a district choose to go in that direction, I promise you that will happen. It is like a newborn baby to some students, relinquishing their cell phone. And so we have an unwritten policy or more practice level that teachers, when you enter the classroom, you're not using it. It's very heavily enforced in middle school today. Matter of fact, I was there today. A kid walked out of the classroom on the way to the bathroom, pulled it out, checked their phone. Mr. Devine was right there to say, hey, make sure that phone's away. So it is becoming part of the culture. Again, will always be something that we are there will be a challenge with consistency in enforcement. So there's a lot of investments right now in these bags, that are, you know,
Yeah.
reference to bags. I've seen a ton of schools, purchasing these bags. I want you to think about just the management of that, right? In middle school, think about in the morning. 400 students entering a single point of access, having to check their phones into a bag. Homeroom would have to be 45 minutes long, right?
We did that before a show and just madhouse.
Greece is much larger than us and they're doing,
I know,
so how are they doing?
I think they're doing it in their first bell classes. Have to report back in the day.
Yeah.
So again, it is an option, but again, what I really want to do is just collect some opinions. Right, parents are gonna feel differently than teachers do, I promise you that.
I've had some extreme years.
Yeah.
I've had some parents that say, I'm not sure this is a great thing or a good thing. I had other parents saying, about time. But how are you going to police it, right? So, and that's when I bring up the bags and, you know, if you've been to a concert recently, you know, a lot of venues are now making you do that with your cell phone.
I need to pick up one of these bags for my home as a parent of 4. And throw mine in there too. I mean, and that's the point, right? As
Shut off
parents, I think we
Wi-Fi.
struggle with, you know, I will occasionally lift my eyes from my device, to tell my kids to get off their device, you know, so it is a difficult one across all of society.
And the concern with mental health, you know, social media is such a factor in some students' mental health.
That's
So it's 6.5 hours a day, right, for providing some guardrails for kids on, you know, electronic device use, right? So that's why I think the community piece, the parent guardian piece is so important. So hoping that by the first of the year, we'll have that put together, and we'll be thoughtful in terms of how we aggregate that data and make some decisions around that. Great. Okay.
I have one other item that another board member kind of brought up again. I think it's worth mentioning is. In the past, you know, we've been dealing with, working on a lot of different things, but we talked previously about. Student representation here at the board meetings. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out again and, you know, talk to, you know, just throw it to our building administrators and say, how can we, or at least at the high school level. You know, can we kind of work towards identifying how to make that happen in a, you know,
We haven't
in a
had it
good
for
way.
a couple of years. I know I always ask every
We
year.
just got it back off the ground when COVID. hit.
Yeah,
I believe
that's
the last
right.
one was Katie Uronsky.
Yeah.
Yep, so.
I-
What was the purpose?
It's just student representation on the board. Katie would give just an update or insight or input. I mean, even a student could give input on a cell phone policy too. I think it's good for boards to have
Voice.
a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had it, I spent a lot of time driving to Hamilton with my son. And today he's like, why doesn't the students have a school board? They would get stuff done. So there was a disconnect between what I do and what he thought I did. But it made me remind myself that we have had like a student on the board like we have in the past. And it's not like, I said, well, what about, you know, your student body president and that kind of stuff, and that's more like a popularity contest, or no one else wants to do it, so someone steps up. Yeah,
So when we solicit participation. The cell is, we want you there to have a voice in conversations around like tonight. Practice versus policy, state of technology, are we putting something on there that could be more student related?
I think what we did with Katie, again, it was only a couple of meetings she got to participate in after she was asked to be part of that. The recommendation came from the building administrator.
Yep.
You know, we didn't really approve the recommendation. Okay, good.
yeah, so like
Um,
Mr. Graham would recommend,
But we would ask her, you know, what are you hearing in the schools? What's the student body buzz and things of that nature? Just kind of a quick state of the students.
they don't vote,
They don't vote.
they're not part of the executive session,
Right.
yeah,
They're not an actual true member of
No,
the board.
they're not, yeah.
They're more like the liaison.
Yeah.
But it would also, so for instance, if there was somebody here tonight, there was a student representative, they could go back tomorrow and potentially have the conversation with the other students, stating, oh, they're talking about, they're gonna revamp that athletic policy. And those kids are gonna hear that better from a student. And I'm guessing there's 0 students on our Zoom tonight, and I don't see any in the audience, but it's just an opportunity, to reward a student, who the administrators feel could be, a help to the board or
Should make
a
Tony
voice.
sit on it.
But it started out really good. I know Katie was very happy about it. When it happened, her parents were even more happy. But I think we'd have to define that role a little bit. We didn't do a great job at defining it. I think the first time we asked Katie what's going on, she
Look like a deer.
looked, yeah, exactly. And said, well, what do you mean? Well, what are you hearing? What are the students saying? I think there would need to be some coaching ahead of time. Prior to that first meeting. Last thing you want is, a student, well, I hear that the music teacher is, this, that, or the other thing. But some education behind board, almost a start for like a youth leadership opportunity for somebody. So,
Right, well, maybe draft something up that we can use to consistently sort of approach this. See if you guys, see if I'm on the same page.
sure.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be one, it could be a couple.
I'm happy to help too. I can see what other school boards have done with it.
Great. All right, let's keep moving here. Number 4 is subcommittee update. We talked a bit about policy already. Do we have any other subcommittee discussion? The only other, our capital project, we're keep plugging along on that, and there's more to come. So we have another meeting next week scheduled. So as we move forward, we'll have some, we have some, down the list, there's some action item, but we'll have more meat and potatoes to talk about it at a later time. once we start to come to-
All that is a designated spot on there for any sort of committee members to say, yeah.
Yeah.
We should. State this occurred, bring members of the subcommittee, right, and make sure that it's where.
Right.
So it's really your responsibility. Okay.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent item list. Motion approved. Moved by
Second.
Brian Burton, second by Roz.
Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I
Any opposed? So carried. All right, number 6, action items. So it's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached board policy for first reading. There are 5 of them. I'm just going to read the policy number and name, and then not read them individually. So A 408.10 gender neutral bathroom, A 407.2 protection of people's rights, A 301.14 interpreters for hearing impaired parents, A 302.5 dissection of animals, A 303.5 significant disproportionality. Do I have a motion for the first reading?
motion,
Moved by Roz.
second,
Second by Kieran. Any discussion or question?
The question came up, do we need to do first and second reading on this? Because they're the ones that are legally required to be in your policy.
Right.
Could we just go to final approval on?
That's a good question. Does our policy indicate that we have?
We talked about that in the subcommittee.
Yeah.
And what she said was, right out of the gate, I recommend you just provide opportunity for at least the time frame between one meeting and the next allows for public comment.
Okay. Any other discussion? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of budget election calendar. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached budget election calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton, second
Second.
by Deb Phelps. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of the fiscal year 21-22 extra classroom activity fund account. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached 21-22 extra classroom activity fund corrective action plan from the 21-22 annual external audit. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton, second by Clyde Birch. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached fiscal year 21-22 financial statement corrective action plan from the 21-22 annual external audit. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton, second. By Kiernan.
Yeah.
Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution awarding contracts for the Norwich City School District Capital Improvement Project Phase 1 roofing. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton, second.
Second.
Who's that, Ross?
Yep.
Any discussion or question?
How close were they to what we budgeted?
Under.
Yeah, did we budget? I thought we budgeted about 10 million for that. Is that?
Well, depends on how you slice and dice it, but this one. Without getting too far in the weeds, this was just under.
Awesome.
Yeah. Remember what we did strategically, instead of awarding it to a single roofer, we have three different facilities to act simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went through a cooperative purchasing whole system that gives resolution we approved last time, allowed us to do it a little differently than.
So we're under until there's a cost of it.
There's a lot, man. A lot. That's the cost. Yeah, that's why we went through.
Okay.
And they have accounted for overages in their bids.
Nice job. Any other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. I'll entertain a motion to approve the personnel recommendations given.
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton,
Also,
second by Clyde Birch. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. Do we have any public comment?
No.
Okay. We are gonna go in executive session. Do we want anyone else?
I'd like to bring Brian Bartlett in and give a legal issue.
Okay. Yep. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session to discuss legal and personnel matters. No action will be taken during executive session. Moved by Clyde, second by Kiernan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it.
I get those numbers, right? Participation in the insurance program.
Yeah, it'd be great.
I get the numbers for you overwhelmingly. They take it. It's smart. It's smart. You have to.
oh, my word.
Okay. Brian, can you shut us off? I need to. Is that, Brian, is that on? Is this on?
Terry, we shut that door for me, please?
I gotta go out that door. I gotta lock the door.
Do you want a picture of this or anything?